So this is Unit 2, Bio. So all living things are composed of matter. What matter basically means if it takes up space and has mass. Now, an element. Okay, so here we have the periodic table of elements. Okay, so each of these elements Now, without at least one of these elements, your life can start deteriorating as far as your health. Okay, so if we look at this nitrogen deficiency corn compared to the right side, okay, it's very deficient. They don't have enough compared to the beautiful, efficient enough nitrogen corn on the left. Now, a goiter. Okay, this lady has a goiter, which is basically she did not consume. So the two parts that are in the nucleus are the protons. Protons are positive. So you can draw it in two typical ways. Either you can draw it in this location. Now, most so again, protons. Outside of the nucleus. So atomic number and atomic mass. Okay, so if we take one of so we don't really count them. Now an ion. An ion basically means it's an atom that either can gain or lose electrons. And okay, all of the following. So again, let's wrap it up. Isotope. So let's talk about chemical bonds. Now, a chemical bond, so two or more elements can combine to form a molecule, aka a compound. bonds. Now, an actual compound itself is chemically combined, okay? So, iron sulfide. Okay, so that's why they're called a mixture instead. So, there's a couple different types of bonds. So, you have covalent, that means they share electrons. Most of the time, it's water. So, let's move into properties of water. So it also creates surface tension. So surface tension, if you look at the shark, okay, so we notice that it has not actually broken the surface tension, okay, or we have not broken the hydrogen bonds between the water. Okay, so even though it is above the horizon of the water itself, now polarity. Polarity basically means that it either attracts or is being repelled, okay, based off of the charge. Now water is really polar, okay, so what it does is basically it is very attractable, okay, so again, it's slightly positive, slightly negative, but has an overall zero charge. Now high specific heat. Basically what this means is it takes a lot of energy for water just to be raised 1 degree, okay, so it only means that it needs to be at a certain temperature to either boil, such as 212, so speaking of high heat capacity, okay, again, it takes a large amount of heat energy in order to raise the temperature by 1. start cooling you down. Stuff. Okay, so it wasn't a very nice place to live. So how in the world did life? So they use this apparatus. Okay, so this apparatus basically simulated three very important conditions on Earth. Okay, lots of lightning, lots of heat, lots of gas from volcanic activity, and then of course there was water vapor. Okay, so what they did is they had electrodes. That was the methane gas plus the ammonia plus hydrogen, and basically this simulated lightning. Okay, so the gases, which were also in. Now, after about 2 weeks, they noticed that the majority of the carbon from carbon dioxide, as well as the other. So, organic chemistry. Basically, what that means is if you are organic, you have got to be made out of carbon. So, if we look at all of these leading organic compounds, hydrocarbon, alcohol, alanine. Now, why is carbon so important? Okay, it's so important because our macromolecules. Now, macro means big, molecule means molecule. Okay, basically what this is. So there's four groups. There's protein, there's carbohydrate, there's lipid, there's nucleic acid. Okay, so these three, okay, the top three, protein, carbohydrates, and lipids, are so important that the FDA actually requires this on all of our food products. So we actually look at your types of monosaccharides. Okay, so another way you can remember what it's made out of is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. There's one carbon to every two hydrogen to every one oxygen. So carbo and H2O means hydrate. So carbohydrate. Now, what they do is they are used to store and release energy. Okay, so here are some different examples. You've probably have heard of glucose. Glucose is your blood sugar. Now, galactose and fructose are both, fructose is your fruit sugar. So all of your sweet fruits, like your mangoes, your pineapples, your. Now, disaccharide. So di means two, saccharide again means sugar. So we have two sugars together. So sucrose is what we like to put in our sweet tea. Sucrose is table sugar. Maltose is malt sugar. That's gluten. Energy, of course. So let's go through them again. Monosaccharide. Mono means one. That's like glucose or fructose. Disaccharide is like sucrose or lactose. Poly just means repeats. Okay, so this is like starch, glycogen, or cellulose. Now, what the heck is starch? Starch is basically the equivalent of plant sugar. Okay, so it's just okay. Now, glycogen. Of energy. Okay, so again, sugar, starches, cellulose. We also, you can hear it in terms of fiber. Okay, so this is basically insoluble, but it's really, 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 really good for your digestion. Okay, it keeps you regular. Now, starches. Okay, remember that is like plant sugar. Now, glycogen is kind of like animal sugar. Now, this is a really interesting video. If you take a minute, click on the link. It will actually show you the inside, or what is inside of a cow's stomach, and how they actually process plant material. Because we, unfortunately, we cannot break that cellulose, or the sugar that is in, or what has formed the cell wall. So they actually have a really interesting stomach production that they can digest these. Alright, so let's talk about lipids. Now, lipids are really similar to carbohydrates because they're made out of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and water. Now, again, it's made out of basically several combinations of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Okay, there's not that much oxygen compared to the hydrogen. Okay, so it's insoluble in water, so that means that it's non-polar. So some examples are fats, oils, waxes, and cholesterol. Now, what is it used for? It's used to basically store energy in the terms of long-term energy. Now, carbohydrates are for quick, fast energy. Okay, so this is for long-term energy. So think of, you use your carbs when you sprint. Now you use your lipids when you are going on a marathon. Okay, it builds your cell membrane, it insulates you, keep you warm, and then also is a shock absorber. Okay, so that's why every single time you have a seat, you don't break your tailbone. Now, there's a couple different types. There's saturated fats. Saturated fats are single bonded. That means that the fatty acid chains are single bonded with the carbons. Now, it's also solid at room temperature. So this is like butter or lard, and this is high in heart disease patients. Now, glycerol is a 3-carbon molecule. Basically, it's a backbone of all lipid membranes. Okay, so some other ones could be like pigmentation or steroids. Okay, so one pigment that is also a lipid is chlorophyll, and that's found in plants, and that's really important for photosynthesis. Now, triglycerol, this is basically what we see in plants and animal fat. Okay, there's two different fatty acids. Okay, so unsaturated, we talked about saturated, that's single and solid. Unsaturated is double in liquid. Okay, now polyunsaturated, remember poly means many, unsaturated means double. So basically this is the quote unquote good fats. So if we look at our nutrients, now, what the heck is trans fats? Now, trans fats are unsaturated, but they just don't have as now phospholipids. Okay, so phospholipid is one of the fatty acids that basically is replaced by a phosphate group. So it's made out of a head and two tails. Now, dissolve in water. Now, it's a bilayer. So a bilayer means bi means two, layer means in stacks. So these guys actually have, this is what your not, they're scared of it. I want you to review this chart. This is the chart that we are going to place in your graphic organizer. Check out the video. Now proteins. Proteins, their building block is called an amino acid. Now there's only 20 that we know of, okay? But the cool thing about it is we can connect them in a number of ways, okay? So the sequence of the amino acid determines the shape of their protein. Cells. So again, it still has carbon, still has hydrogen, still has oxygen. But the main difference is it has nitrogen, okay? So again, it varies in sizes and shapes. The shape determines its function. Now, it's pretty much essential for everything, okay? So it does everything from being structurally to support to aiding in chemical reactions, does a little bit of everything. Okay, so some examples are your actin and myosin. We find these in muscles. Keratin, we talked about that. That's for structure. That's in your hair. Hemoglobin is for carrying or support. That's your blood protein. And hormones. Okay, that's for control. Enzymes actually assist in chemical reactions. Specifically, as soon as you take a bite of any food, you have enzymes inside your mouth that's going to immediately start digesting your carbohydrates. Because again, that's quick, fast energy. So we talked about amino acids. So again, amino acids are the building blocks of protein, but there's only 20. Some are polar, some are non-polar. Some have a charge, some don't have a charge. Okay, but each of them are linked together by a special bond called a peptide bond. These chains that they form are called polypeptide. Again, poly means many. So each of the chains will form a particular amino acid. Okay, once that particular amino acid is made, depending on the sequence, depends on the shape, depends on its function. Defense, does a little bit of everything. So DNA is made out of two strands, which turns into a double helix, single-stranded. So again, check this out. This is a recap. This is going to be for your review in your graphic organizer. So check out the video. All right, so pH. pH basically is a base or alkaline. Now, each time you go up the scale, okay, it increases 10. Now, let's look at some of the pH as far as in us. Okay, blood is around 7, sweat is 4 to almost 7, saliva is 6. Now, blood and these other things can be called buffers. Okay, so in your graphic organizer, I want you to label this from 0 to 14. I want you to give me the acid range, the base range, neutral. Now, enzymes. Enzymes are a very, very important protein. Basically, so I want you to look at this, okay? So we call this the lock and key model. Basically what that means is each enzyme has their own specific shape, okay? And each substrate has their own specific shape. So this enzyme here, okay, kind of looks like Pac-Man. So you've got a substrate here, this is molecule A, and it's got to fit perfectly in that active site. If it does not fit, okay, so you cannot take your car keys and try to go in your house. It does not fit. Okay, so therefore it's got to be a perfect match. Okay, so the substrate has to fit the enzyme perfectly at the active site in order for the reaction to start. Now, once the reaction starts and they start combining, that's called the enzyme substrate complex. This catalyzes or basically speeds up the process until it actually turns into a product. Okay, therefore this new product or molecule B actually is changed or morphed, and it goes on its merry way to proceed with either digestion or control or whatever. But the enzyme itself never, ever, ever, ever changes. It just gets recycled for the next substrate to continue this cycle again. So again, enzymes never change, substrates and products do. At this chart here. Okay, so enzymes will actually lower the reaction's activation energy, or the amount of energy needed to start a reaction. Now, if you look at the first one, here are you with the ball. Okay, it takes a lot of energy for you to push that ball over that hill to roll down the other side. This is the activation, or the amount of energy needed without the enzyme. Now look at it compared to with a enzyme. Not as difficult. Not as much energy required to start. okay? pH is the same way. We like right around 7, okay? If you go up to 10,